Oh, this
That
is
was,
right now it's midnight here.
oh, okay. Okay, we're gonna get started. I'm sure other people might join us, but so if you follow me on Instagram or on Twitter, you probably see me post um, a lot of these icons. I've just been doing it as a personal project. I think I'm at about 157 now. Not all of these I've actually posted. Some of them I didn't like enough, so I didn't really do anything with it. That'd be like this guy right here. But this is the raw art. So if I zoom in on one of these, I kind of save it in a raw format. So if I select this, it almost looks like she's wearing a Mickey Mouse hat, but I keep it in all the raw shapes, raw paths, and that way, if I ever want to go back and use it for something else, I can do that. And then I I then build it out clean, so it's just shapes, no strokes. And this just shows some of the colors. I used to just keep it flat to organize stuff, but I've been doing color as I've gone along. And so that's kind of where it started, where it's at now. And so what I wanted to do is I just wanted to go through the process of creating one of these. It's not very complicated in terms of the process because you don't really have to do a whole lot of pen tool work. It can be done with shapes and expanding of strokes. And those are the kind of things. I'm going to attempt to build one in the amount of time here. They only give me 40 minutes on a free account, so we'll see if I'm able to do that. But this is where it starts, just a drawing. And to give you an idea of the size I build at, this is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I almost never have this turned on. I kind of like having just a clean white surface without any edge. And so this is where it starts, where it's just a scanned in little sketch I did. And I originally started building all these in one color. And then as I went along and started doing more and more, I started making them like duo color. That was kind of fun. But then now I've been doing kind of multicolors. And this is about the most colors I add to anything. But they all kind of have the same aesthetic and feel because I limit it to a square proportion, and then I try to use the same geometry for some of the tolerances, like the same amount of space between shapes, just to kind of keep it consistent. So that's kind of what we're going to create here. Specifically, we're going to create this guy. Now, he's a lot larger than what I just showed you because this is about how big I draw it. And if I turn on this layer, this is about as big as I build it. So I'll just take this sketch and I usually size it smaller, select that, and just align it so it shows up in the middle. And then I don't care about it distorting it because I'll do that just to force it into a square orientation, kind of like that. And sorry, my palettes are totally set up different for this recording. So I have everything in muscle memory. So this is a little bit throwing me off because these are never organized like this. So I'll set the opacity and I lock that layer. And on this guide that I have set up for these shapes, I have anchor points at the center so I can see where the line goes down because most of these are symmetrical. So at times I'll just build just one side, flip it, kind of fuse it together. So if any of you have a question as I'm going along, go ahead and just unmute and ask it, and I'll keep building. I'll try to answer them as I go rather than stopping and addressing everything. So I'm just going to jump right into this. And like the way I created that eye, I have all kinds of keyboard shortcuts set up. So I have a F3 key I hit to clone stuff, and that does, it's just an action applied to an F key. So if I do something, you're going, wait a minute, how'd you access that so fast or whatever? That's kind of what I'm doing here. By the way, I really don't like, I get all nervous when, I get nervous when my cat comes in and kind of watches me. you know, let alone, you know, how many other people are in here watching over my shoulder. I don't use the rounding tool in Illustrator. I've been using a plugin since it existed 6 years prior to Illustrator adding that feature. So I kind of actively disable it. So you'll notice on shapes, the corner widget doesn't show up because I actively hide it. And then in my preferences, I also set the tolerance for it down. Well, here I have it at 165, but usually it's at 3. So it never shows up. That way, I just use the dynamic corners tool by Astute. So you can just grab a corner and round it. You don't have to select it, then use the widget. So it's a lot faster. And once you do one, if you want the same radius on the opposing side, you just click that. So I use that quite a bit. It does a lot. It's not that you can't do these things with the corner widget. It just works differently. And I'm so used to working this way that I just don't use the other one. So here's a good example of how I use it. I'll just do a circle, pull these out, and kind of overlap those. This is where I know a tolerance that I like to work in on these in terms of 4 points. So I'll clone this, bring this over, just to get that gap the way I want it. So you can see it doesn't really align with my drawing. So I think on this one, what I'll do is, once again, I'm kind of lost. Oh, that's why the screen recording for Zoom is covering up my panel, so I can't see. Well, normally I go up there and do this, but let me do it down here instead. That's throwing me off. Let's see, here we go. I'm gonna go 2, maybe 3. I don't think I'm gonna worry about building both sides. I'm just gonna do one. If I had to guess, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to get this all done, but at least you'll see how I do it. As I go, if there's extra anchor points, I just kind of clean it up as I go along. And this down, actually. That. I have smart guides turned on, Command U, so it snaps to anchor points and paths as well as it does. I mean, there's actually a bug in Illustrator, and they have 2 engineers working on it right now to resolve it. So I'm hoping that gets done pretty quick. And then at times I'll use the palette here because I want to create a round here. So you just set it larger than what it is, in this case, 8, with those 2 corners selected. You hit apply and it'll do a round. So that's another thing I do quite a bit. And we'll do the same thing on this. Do 6, hit that, round that. Oops, accidentally had these. That's okay. I'll just undo those. Ah, sorry, I had everything selected. Actually, I'm just gonna trim it later. Okay. I use the shape building tool quite a bit to edit paths just because it makes it a lot faster to get that kind of shape for the mouth. All of these here on, I don't know, I guess there is wings. We'll do this. And at times, oh, you know what? I have my auto savior turned on. Let's turn that off so it doesn't interrupt us. I have that set up so that that's another plugin by Astute, but I use it quite a bit for just save so I don't think about it. But here, I just want to show you an example of, I'll just create a stroke at times, and knowing I want it a certain thickness, let's say it's going to be 6 points. I work in points, not in inches, and I try to work in whole points, so it just makes the math easier. So in case if this can be a 6-point line, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then I'll select this part and go 1, 2, 3, and then for the gap, I know it needs the same gap, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we go to stroke and set this for 6 now, you know, we have his arm. I'll go in and kind of round this, kind of like this. And you can either expand it or you can go to path and outline stroke. And that way, you know, it turns it into a shape. So I do that quite a bit. We'll do his little pincher hand. I noticed that I had this little kind of claw of sorts on his arm, but then this guy in his belly kind of looks the same. So I'll change this one a little bit so it doesn't look like a claw. I'm not giving these too much thought when I'm drawing them out. I'm just kind of, I'll draw about 20 of them before, I don't know, 10, 20 before I like one enough that I want to build it. So there's a lot of ideas I just don't use because, I don't know, it didn't intrigue me. And since I'm not doing it for a client, I usually just focus on the ideas that I like or enjoy. That's a little too big. And we'll rotate that. And we can go ahead and fuse that. Here's a good example of the snapping coming back to bite you. I thought I had it snap, but then when I rotated, oh, that's why. It's because it's not a perfect circle. Okay, so in that case, I'd rotate it 45 degrees. And then I would select this and align it so that way I know it's gonna be at the same spot when I fuse it together, that area. Here's that. And sometimes I'll cheat. Let's go ahead and do that now. So I'll just do a shape blend. You know, in this case, I'm going to use these to do these, I don't know what they are, legs, I guess. I'll get to that in a little bit. I want to finish up this side. Okay. I think I'm going to cheat and just grab these. So bring these down. And I think we're only going to do one, even though my sketch shows two. And we'll do the stroke again. Here, this is another example of why at times I use strokes instead of actual shapes, because it's easier to figure out the spacing. So in this case, we want to go 6, and want to give them a knee here, and we'll go round cap. So we get a nice round on the end, and you have to consider that the round goes beyond where the stroke is. So in this case, we need to bump this over 3. So this is actual starting position. So I'll select these and kind of visually get it to the edge here. There is a preference you can turn on, which will make this the visual edge of the stroke. It'll constrain the shape to that, not just the path. Because if I hit V, this is the bounding box. And some of you might not be aware of this, but it's really good for doing icons and using strokes. Oops, wrong one. Hold on, let me get back. If I go to preferences and go to general, use preview bounds. So right now, it's just the stroke itself. If I click this and go okay, it makes that bounding box the edge of the stroke. So I almost never use that because it only comes in handy for certain things. So I'm going to turn that back off, but you might not have been aware of that. So that's one way that it'd make it easier to kind of build things for certain projects. I did a whole set of icons for an insurance company, and it was all linear, so it was all stroke. And that's how I use that to size it in the final form. 1, 2, 3. And now we have to do the tolerance up here. 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And I actually, you know, maybe his leg would look better, beefier. I kind of like that better. It's not a whole, it's 7, so it's harder to do the math. So I'm going to go to 8. That way I know I can go 4. So speaking of math, like in high school, my math teacher, he's a nice guy. He got frustrated with me because math just threw me off. I was just like, what? How? I don't get this. Well, if somebody would have just said with fractions, I remember when we got to that, it didn't make any sense to me because, okay, put this number here, carry it over here, do this, do that. And it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If they would have just taken out a ruler and done it visually, it would have made complete sense to me. I don't know if any of you are the same way, but I know I was. Okay, I think that looks better. And we'll just go ahead and expand it. Last time we did it via path. You could do it expand if you want to. It just has an extra pop-up, but either way works to get to a shape. And one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select this, clone it like this. And for right now, I'm going to clone this leg. And when I say that, I'm using an F3 key, which I have Command C, Command F recorded and bound to. That's one of the first things I set up when I moved to Illustrator from freehand, because freehand actually had a clone command where you select a shape and you hit the keyboard command for it and it would clone it. It'd just copy it in place right above it. And there's nothing like that in Illustrator. So I just kind of baked my own with actions and keyboard shortcuts. So now I want to get, I was going to use these paths, but not now. I'm going to do it this way instead with just physical shape. Let's go like this. I don't know how many of you use shape blending. I'm asked a lot, well, do you ever use Affinity? Well, no, mainly because I already made one fundamental change in my career between using freehand for 15 years and now Illustrator for 18. I don't want to make another change to my fundamental creative process and move to Affinity, but there's certain things Affinity can't do, and this is one of them, shape blending. I don't know why. It seems like it'd be pretty simple, but it can't do this. So to shape blend, you have two shapes. Select the shape blending tool, click on one anchor point and then a corresponding one on the next one, and it will blend those shapes. And then if you, I wish everything wasn't hidden behind a little pop-up window. They're trying to get away with that by adding the property panel over here, which is good. But after 18 years of muscle memory, they don't have everything in the property panel. So I still go back to the traditional way of doing it. But in this case, we have 6 shapes. So let's say you wanted 4, and you can preview it. And that actually, that looks pretty good. Let me try 3. Nah, I think I'll go with 4. Once you do this, you have to expand it like this, ungroup it. You can select the ones you don't need, which were the 2 to start with. And actually, since we have most of the bottom built, I'm just going to drag this over so it all overlaps. And I don't remember where I put my, oh, there it is. Unite. Once again, I'll go in and select anchor points I don't need and get rid of them. On these, once again, I'll select those, select the dynamic corners, which is part of the Vector Scribe plugins. I use these every day, all day long, to do stuff just like that. I'm doing it this way because I don't want to have to build these manually. And sorry, it keeps my muscle memory keeps saying go here, and that's not where it normally is. So I'm okay, I messed that up. Oh, that's why I have an extra anchor point in here. You guys are making me nervous. I'm not used to having people. It's one thing to record a movie when you know nobody's watching you, because you have the luxury of, well, if I screw up, I can just re-record it and they can edit it and no big deal. Here it's like, oh crap, I'm gonna mess up and then feel weird. I also feel like I'm just talking to myself. I never do this when I'm working. Well, okay, I take that back. I do it. If I'm listening to a podcast and they say something stupid or whatever, and sorry, I keep messing up here. trying to do two things at once. That, and we'll do this last one. I'm not this slow, trust me, when I normally work. I just not trying to explain stuff as I'm talking, or as I'm building, that is. So that's pretty good. Where are we at time-wise? Okay, we're okay. We might actually be able to finish this. So I'm gonna focus on his ears maybe. I don't know if I'd call them ears. Actually, I take that back. I'm gonna do the central part here, kind of figure out that. Oh wait, no, I don't want it there. Let's see. We'll fuse these together and see if that's gonna work. I think they'll work. Fuse his neck in there. Oops, I got that. Maybe I'll drag it over. Now, sometimes there a way you can do this rounding if you don't have a plugin. You can do it with, actually, let's just do that. If I go into view, you can see I have hide corner widget on. So if I enable that, and we'll go to preferences, and I'll put this back up at 165. I'll go okay. When I go over, oops, did I turn it off by accident? I think I turned it off. Okay. So if I select a shape now, poop, it's not showing it. What am I doing wrong? Okay, there we go. So this is the traditional corner widget. And if you have this, you can do everything I'm showing you with that. So you'd have to select both of these anchors and then, do that. And that's fine. It's actually, this is one example of this corner widget. It's actually a little faster and in my opinion works better than the plugin I use, but I just don't need to do this all the time. So you could do this as well, to build these, or just one corner like that. So actually, I'm just going to leave that because that looks good. So let's focus on something else. We'll do, not really his ear, gill, I guess. That. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and go back and turn this off now because I know I'll screw something up since I don't use that all the time. And so I put it at a tolerance where it like almost next to never shows up. That way, when I select shapes, the corner widget doesn't get in my way. One of the main reasons why I don't use it is when it, and I notice when I'm zoomed out and I'm trying to select a corner, I would activate the corner widget at times, and that really kind of frustrated me. And I didn't like how they implemented it. And I actually consulted on that tool when they were developing it. And when they first showed me, the Astute plugin had been around for 6 years. And so I said, oh, so you just, copied the Astute plugin. And it was kind of like deer in headlights. But at the time they showed it to me, it only worked on 90-degree corners. And I'm going, you mean it doesn't work on non-90-degree corners? Well, no. And I go, you're going to add that, right? Yes, but you're not going to release it this way, are you? well, we were thinking on doing that. And I said, no, you can't do that. I mean, how long do you think it's going to take before a designer goes to round something that's not a perfect 90 degrees and then it doesn't work? Do you think they're going to be, oh, that's okay, they're going to deal, or they'll just say, what the hell? You know, so I told them don't do that. And that's the one time they did listen to me, and they didn't. And 4 months later, they finally got that working. So this is how I build these. One part I'm not sure about, I'm not sure, I might want to put a gap in between the ear, gill, whatever you want to call it, with the head, but we'll see. I need to hurry up so I don't run out of time. I'd like to kind of finish this. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead. Even though I built most of the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and fuse this.
Hey, Vaughn, they said that they extended the time to no limit.
That's what I thought too. And then I was doing something yesterday with somebody helping them, and it ended at 40 minutes. So if it doesn't, great. But if it does, you know, I was doing something with the class I teach on Thursday, and I thought when somebody, it might have been you that told me that on Twitter, I was going, okay, well, that's good. But then it still ended at 40 minutes. So I was like, okay, well, maybe it only applies to certain accounts or whatever. So I'm going to reflect it, and we can, I have the background selected by accident. Fuse those, take the head shapes, fuse that. Eyes, fuse those. This will end up being 4 points, or maybe I'll do 3. 4 is a little thick. And put a round cap on it. It's a little big. I'm gonna, so this example, I'll use a throwaway shape, go to the shape building tool and just trim off these edges here. Then I can toss that. I do that quite a bit. We'll want to round these. Bump it. Sometimes it's easier just to pull away and then go back and kind of figure out. The only thing I don't like about paths is I wish it showed me the thickness, because that's what I'm basing everything on. It just shows you like the keyline view of the path. I never really liked that either. Okay. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these and kind of diminish those a bit. I just didn't like it pinching this space right here. I like keeping breathing room between things. So on this now, I'm going to go, I think I am going to put a gap in between the gill, the ear, whatever you want to call it. And we'll go 4 point. And we'll try it on one side, see what it looks like.
Vaughn, do any of your icons drastically change from the sketch during your building process?
Yeah, every now and then I'll do something and I thought something would work or look good. And then when I go to do it, I go, this looks better if I did it this way.
Do you ever just freeform in Illustrator, or are they always coming from some type of sketch?
Yeah, usually when I'm doing a certain style of icon, I might thumbnail something, but it's really crude, and I know, well, I'm going to be building with geometric shapes anyway. I don't have to be exact, so that would be a time where I don't scan in anything. I might just visually reference it, but I always try to I understand what you're saying. Like if I sat down with a piece of paper and a pen, I don't really have any distinct idea in mind. I just start doodling. For me, this is kind of vector doodling, but I still try to base it off. I just think in analog so much, it's hard for me to just, every time I've tried to do it just without having any kind of clarity of an idea, I just end up spinning my wheels. So over the years, I've just gotten the habit of always kind of starting with the sketch, whether or not it remains exactly like it or not. I don't care so much about, just that I'm trying to, you know, I don't even know what I'm saying now. Does that make any sense?
It does make sense. I get it.
Okay. I was going to angle these, but I kind of like them straight up. It makes them look a little goofier. So kind of what I'm doing here is I always like having things that relate to one another. So, I mean, nobody would care, but I don't know, there's something about it that I've always done this where, you know, I like the fact that this side of the tooth aligns with the eye, this side of the tooth aligns with the eye. Does it matter? Probably not, but it's the same reason like on colors, I'll click into a color and it might be, you know, a fractional number like this. This irritates me. It's like, nope, that has to be, I'd probably go 25 here, and on this I go 16. So I like whole numbers, and I have yet to meet anybody to confirm, does it make any difference? Because I've noticed that on certain colors, you might sample a color from an image and then add it to your swatches. And if you go into the swatch options, it'll be fractional. It'll say it's a fractional number, but I notice when you hover over Illustrator, it makes it whole numbers. So I've yet to meet anybody to explain that to me. Like, does it matter? Why does the program itself do that? But I don't know. It's kind of inside baseball with Illustrator. It probably doesn't even matter. I think I tried 4 on the offset, but all I'm gonna do, I think, is too much. 2, 3, I'll try 3. We'll see if that looks good. I don't know. I think I'm gonna leave it just fused to his head. I don't like the gap there. So we're gonna do a few more things. I'm gonna move this down just a little.
Do you ever use view outlines?
The keyline view, like that?
Yes.
Yeah, I do that at times, especially not so much on a simple style like this, but if it's complex and I'm trying to figure out, okay, the one thing Illustrator still doesn't do well, in my opinion, is, make sure I remember this, 1, 2, 3, is that when you have layers and if you're not managing your layers, like I'm building everything on one layer here because this is a pretty simple style, but if something gets more complex, I try to organize my layers. And the whole reason I do that is because in freehand, you could sub-select content under one another like super easy. It was easy to, I forget the exact key command, but you'd select the shape, I think is hold option, and just drill down to whatever you want, whether it was a stroke, whether it was a fill shape, and it was just easy to select things. There was no hassle whatsoever. Illustrator, even though they said they added it like, I don't know, 6 versions ago, it still doesn't work great, and it works horribly on stroke shapes. It just won't select them at times. And so in that case, yeah, I would use keyline view to isolate things. I'm kind of a stickler with my layers now, mainly because of the reason I just explained, but I don't use sublayers. Notice I have it disabled here. I kind of view layers as like, you watch those horror movies, it's the scary basement in a, you know, a horror movie, like you're yelling at the guy on screen, don't go into the basement, you know. And that's kind of the way I view sublayers. It's the absurdity of them at times is kind of self-evident, like one singular anchor point could be its own layer. And I see students that I work with all the time, they get bogged down trying to manage their file. And I say, just organize your primary layers and just stick to that. You don't need to go to into sublayers. It's just kind of a hassle to do that. And with the appearance panel, you don't always need to use multiple shapes. You can, you know, manage those as well.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna change the look of that so it doesn't look like a claw. I still want to keep it kind of circular, but I think to change the look, I'm gonna make him a turtle head. And maybe it'll be the same species. So I don't know, maybe this is a mother and that's its baby. I don't know. Ah, okay, that's an example. I don't like what I created, so I'm just gonna, I'll just start with what I had. I'm just gonna change its eye, I guess. Usually I wouldn't just delete it like that. By the way, I have layers. I'll have a layer in all my build files where it's called X. And you know, people have asked me, why? Well, I saw that movie, you had a layer called X. Why is it X? All I configure is I started building that way back in the 90s. Once again, I was using freehand, and at the time I liked the X files. I think that's literally why I named it X, but it's like a junk drawer. So instead of just deleting it, I'll just, if I don't want to use it, I'll just drag it there. So maybe later I might want to use it, but I kind of like can always go back to any build file and go to that layer and access, you know, content that I might have explored but never used. There's entire designs in my X layers and different build files. Maybe this baby's grumpy. Okay, we'll leave that. And make it the same thickness as neck above. Oh, you guys might hear, I forgot the lawn people come today, so I didn't think they would since what's going on, but so if you hear something, that's what it is. Actually, I'm going to zoom in on here because I want to make sure these are spaced well. So is everybody like at home who, if you work for somebody, they have you at home right now?
I do. I'm working from home.
Okay.
Well, not now.
I work at home all the time.
Yeah, that's what I've been telling people is I've been self-quarantined for 18 years now. So it's, the dynamic isn't really different. It's just that my clients are all having to operate differently. That's the only thing that's changed.
Yeah, it's slowed stuff down.
Okay. Okay, all we need left to do now is I'm going to get rid of these build grids. We don't need them anymore. And it's at this point that I'd select everything that's going to be the base part of this. And I usually just go ahead and fill this black and send it to the back. Then I'll select anything that's non-strokes, like this. Here's another thing that kind of irritates me in Illustrator is I'll unite everything. And well, if I go Command Z, I can hold Option down and unite, and it'll turn it into a compound shape. But I always forget to do that. And if you don't do that, it just remains a group. And I was telling, and because I used freehand for 15 years, I told the engineers that Illustrator, you know, students, I mean, users, it doesn't, not just students, but like seasoned veterans, they always get confused about compound paths because it's inconsistent in Illustrator. Here, you're doing unite because unite is kind of a compound term. You want it to be all united as one, and it acts like that, but it's actually just a group. Yet, when you go to do certain things, because it's a group, it's going to cause problems. So I convinced Illustrator in one version, you need to make this by default a compound. You would have less people being confused, and the only reason they didn't do that is because that's interesting. The only reason they didn't do, well, they did do it for one version, and then all the evangelists complained. I don't know why they complained, because it just makes it easier for the average user. I don't know, what am I doing here? Okay, so here's an example where I've been using Illustrator for 18 years and I stumped myself. So all I did is I took these shapes, and it's a compound. So it's not a group, they're a compound shape. If I select this, it's just a path, meaning it's just a filled shape. This is sitting on top of it. I select both of them and I do this and nothing happens. I can't tell you how many times when I'm working in Illustrator, just one function or another just decides to go on vacation. Like, yeah, I'm not going to work anymore. And this is the case. I didn't plan on this. So we'll try it a different way. We'll do this.
Sometimes
Yeah,
if you bring one of them to the front, even though it is in the front, it'll let you do it after.
Okay, I'll try that. Here, make sure. That's weird. Like, I've only ran into that a few times, so let me try something. I'll go in on something like this and select everything but one, then paste in place. Oh, well, that's interesting. Let's do this. Okay. I do this 1,000 times a week, so I don't know why it's giving me a problem now, but unite it. And if I don't hold option, oh, I bet I screwed it up by holding option down before, because in the appearance panel, it says it's a group. So if I add to this, God, this is weird. Well, I'm officially stumped. I don't know why this is doing this. Okay, that's weird. Can I group it? Wow, I was afraid somebody would ask me a question. I would get stumped, and here I did it to myself. I can't. Okay. I'm gonna figure this out. Figure this out, meaning, okay, any of you have any idea why this isn't working? Because I should have told my friend Carlos to be on here. He's like Yoda when it comes to everything Illustrator. He'd probably point out something really simple that I'm doing wrong, but well, the point is, nothing should ever be this difficult in a vector program. You shouldn't be able to get into these weird situations, and it has to do with the complexity of compound paths. It's like on one feature, it'll use a compound path. So if I select these circles here, let's color them differently because I don't have all of them selected, and this background, and I go to the shape building tool, if I use this, notice how I can do it this way, but that's really slow to do it that way, but it worked. But then the Pathfinder wouldn't work. So those are kind of inconsistencies where in one way it works, one way for whatever reason it won't work or it causes problems. So will it let me do it now with just this one? Nope. But if I go to the shape building tool, well, that's interesting. It's trying to select. It seems to be the
It's saying
Yep, go ahead.
it's saying it's a compound path when you select it. I don't know if that matters. The others weren't.
Oh, okay. Let's go. Well, that's weird.
Duplicate.
It won't let me release it. You know what? Screw you. I'll just create a new one.
A compound shape, not a compound path. That was the issue. That last yellow circle was a compound shape. See that? See the appearance panel?
Yeah.
I think that's the issue.
So how did I do that?
Yeah, that I'm not sure. But I think you want to reduce its appearance to basic. So that's no longer a compound shape.
And how do I do that?
From the hamburger menu on the appearance panel,
Oh, okay.
clear appearance.
Well, it still says it's a compound shape. Okay. Let me try it with no fill then. Forget it. You're not part of our reindeer games. I'm just going to create a new shape. Wow, I didn't know I'd waste that much time just to do circles. Okay. So that's my life at times. So if you ever see me rant on Twitter to Illustrator, it's usually because I run into something like this. And I kind of stump myself. And you'd think I made the mistake when I switched from freehand to Illustrator to think, oh, it's a vector program. How different can it be? Only to discover it was quite a bit different. So I'll select this. Sorry for that, that rabbit trail. I didn't expect that to happen. We're almost done here, so I don't like these. So I'm going to select this. And I just want to make these just circular. There, I like that better. Okay, we'll take the ears, fuse them with the head. And let me see what my sketch showed. Okay, and this is where I'll go in using the same tolerance as the mouth. Kind of start adding these lines. I'm doing this because then it'll allow me to go in later and color different things if I want to do a multiple color. Almost done, I think. Oh, that's right. I wanted to try something up here. Now, this is why I use like whole numbers, like things divisible by 2, essentially. So if I used a 4 point, then I know all I'd have to do is go 1, 2 to have it match my art. But because it's 3, I don't have my points set up for that kind of incremental change. So so this is where I would go, and I go offset. And since it's 3, we'll put 1.5. Change that to that. And I'm doing that so I can align it. Get rid of that. We don't need it now. Just to get that kind of cut in on that. Actually, I think I'm going to get rid of not that far, like that. This will be the last thing, and then we'll build the clean art. Just need to adjust this. I think we can turn off our sketch now. Okay, so I get it to like this point, and this was, I'd consider this raw art because I want it in its final form to be shapes. Actually, I just noticed these are a little too low when I expand them. And so I'll usually select everything and I'll group it, and then I'll put it I'm building in a file that has all of these for the most part, and I'll add it to this, which is all my raw art that I've created. And then once I figure out the color, then I'll add the color ones to the color one, to the group of color icons. So I'll just make a copy of this, deselect everything that's black, everything filled white or white strokes. These are going to be the gaps. And I'll just go path, outline, stroke. So everything now is shapes. Don't need a stroke on that. So just to show you all the shapes interacting with the art, I'll unite these, make sure it's a compound, select this shape, and then I just punch it through like a cookie cutter donut, and I usually ungroup. That way it gives me access to like the head. This will be the inner part of the torso, and then I can color the feet, so on. And so now I'm gonna go ahead and turn on this layer. This is the specific color palette that I limit myself to for all these icons. And some of them are just flat colors. Then I'll do duotones or 2-color base themes, and then I'll do multicolored ones. This one will be kind of a multicolored one, but if I select this clean art now, which is all it is just fill, and we'll unite this so it's one cohesive compound path. And then sometimes I've been coloring them kind of like that. But in this case, I also have my color family in its own folder over here. So we'll just color this guy, and I'll just start playing around. Oops, I'll start playing around to see what looks good. Maybe his body's red. That's a lot of red, so maybe something darker. We'll try that. You know, now that I'm looking at this, I'm gonna edit it. I'm gonna go back to my, and I always go back to here, even though I can edit it in this, just so if I ever go back to my source art, it matches. So in this case, this shape is, we want this 3 since that's the tolerance we're using. And I'm just going to put a gap just so I can color this inner part differently than the rest. So we'll put a white gap. So the creature, or the baby, I guess, inside this character can be colored differently than the torso. I think it'll just look better. So we'll do that. I try to clean up as I go. So these anchor points we don't need. Get rid of those. And then that way, isolation mode's kind of like the old Flash. If you ever worked in Flash, isolation mode used all the time. And then we'll go, I will try that. Maybe the arms, this. These go back to what the head is. I'm now thinking I should separate the ears so I can bring color up in there. Not sure. Let me think. I think what I'm going to do instead, I'm just sitting here staring at the screen, which doesn't make a compelling video. Sorry, sometimes I just kind of stump myself, so I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. Well, I think it might look good. I think there's too much purple in this, so like, if we put a gap here, you know, I'd have to adjust this artwork a little bit. I think I'd like that better. So, well, this makes it more difficult now. So I think I know what I'm going to do. Yep, I know what I'm going to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this inner shape here. So this is like art directing yourself. You get to a point where you think you're almost done. You go, I don't like it. And so, oops, you decide to make a change, which is fine. I mean, you should be doing that. So in this case, I'm just going to cascade this all the way across. And we're going to edit this shape. Just punch this through, send it to the back. Okay. And I'm just going to bring this all the way over. On this one. Select those and delete it. Okay. The way we're going to fix this, because now it doesn't match the tolerances, which there are 3 points. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to drag this down, snap to this edge, 1, 2, 3. And then we'll just make his neck a little longer. Like that. Then we can take this shape, clone it, Command C, Command F, minus front from the top, the bottom. So we still get the same idea, but I think this way, then we can, let's see what this looks like in red. Or maybe that's purple and this is red. No, that doesn't look good. That might work. Let's try that. I try to balance the color. That's what I'm doing here. And I'm not going to bring red anywhere else. Kind of makes him look like he's wearing tube socks, which I kind of like. So we'll keep that. We'll make these purple. You don't need to be called out. And actually, now that I look at this maybe, yeah, I like that better. Just simplifies it. We might be done. I might add one more stripe. Let me do that. And then I think we'll be finished. Yeah. Yeah, I like bringing some of the purple up there. So I think we're done. And that's how I create an icon like this. Not really an icon, just an iconic illustration of sorts. lately I've been doing a little bit of creative writing, coming up with stories for these characters. So I'll figure out what I'll write for this and post this within the next few days. So if anybody has any questions, I'll take like 5 minutes to field any questions about anything vector or otherwise. You guys are quiet. 44 people are lurking. No questions? Anybody?
I got one real quick as an educator. How do you feel about Zoom teaching or using it for tutorial?
This is the first year I've used it for that, and it seems to be less hinky than Skype. So I kind of like it.
Okay, cool. Thinking about using it for my class now, maybe.
Yeah. Hey, Lim, how you doing? Speaking of a student, Lim was one of my students when I taught here locally.
Hey, sorry, it's going to be a little loud in my background. My son's home today.
No problem.
Actually, this looks great. I always have a lot of fun looking into your process, and it's great to see how even as a seasoned professional, your process still evolves over time. So it's like nothing is set in stone, and it's cool to see that you're really being kind of fluid in what you do.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Now, you just made me think of something. Try. Ooh, I like that better.
Somebody asked in the comments, and I'm curious too, what kind of a mouse you use? It's programmable, I'm sure.
Believe it or not, no. It's the one and only Microsoft device that I use. It's a tablet, a tablet Bluetooth mouse. I've never liked Apple's mouses. I don't know. It's like a lot of things Apple does. It's a little too oversimplified for my taste. So, yeah, I just use a regular tablet mouse. You get it anywhere. There was a period of about a year I used a Wacom tablet and pen, and I have one. I have a Cintiq, but I only use it for illustrating, although I have a lot of friends who use it all the time for doing vector work. I've just never bothered to, I don't have the desktop space for the Cintiq to sit in front of me, so I'm still kind of doing it the old school way with the mouse. It's funny that you can even say old school with the mouse now, but I don't know. It works, so I keep using it that way. It might be more efficient with the Wacom. I just have never taken the time to see if that's the case. I keep looking at this head and thinking I might be able to, oh, I like that way more. We're going to do that. Okay.
I have a question I would like to
Sure.
ask. What inspired you to start this series of diversity icons?
Well, I wanted to show some in one of my DVG lab episodes. I wanted to show how you could use like third-party scripts that people have created with Illustrator. So if you go to edit, or I'm sorry, file, down to scripts, you can put scripts in here that people have created and they'll do certain things. Actually, I'll demonstrate one. So when I created that bonehead, the design the other day, I used that script, I started with an oval, but there's no way in Illustrator, or maybe there is, and I just don't know about it. That happens at times too, where I want to grab this handle, and when I pull it out, I want it to reflect on the opposite side. Now, as far as I know, I don't know how to do that if there is, but this is one way you can do it with the script. You go File, and it's not super efficient because you have to pull down, go over, go to the script, but this has been around forever. And it's called Extend Handles, and you just put in a percentage, let's say 160, like that. Go here, go to File, Script. Once again, not very handy since you have to go through these menus. It'd be nice if it was just right on the property menu, property panel, that is. And if you do 160, you can create really nice, geometrically perfect, but not standard oval shapes. And so that's how I created that kind of seal for the bonehead design I posted on Instagram the other day. So I use that. There used to be a really good plugin called Better Handles was the name of it, and it had a floating palette, and you could select an anchor point, go to that floating palette, and it would do exactly what I just showed you here. But actually, Astute Graphics bought that Better Handles, and their plugins do this as well. So if you go here, select this, and I believe it's, probably gonna get this wrong. Nick's gonna get on my case because he'll show me after I'm all done, why didn't you do this? And so you can do all kinds of things under the submenu for their PathScribe tool within VectorScribe. You can select handles on selected points, so if we do that, you can see how the handles were selected there. And well, this is the way I should be doing it. I always forget this is in here, but it does exactly what I did with the script. So getting back to your original question, why did I start the icons? Well, I was doing a movie showing scripts, and one of the scripts I wanted to show was how you could select a whole group of objects and randomly, it would randomize the rotation of them. And so, and that hasn't come out yet. That's going to be coming out in, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks. But I wanted to create some art rather than just having a square or whatever. And so I said, how could I make this fun? I said, well, I'll just do these little heads, and we'll use that for the art that I demonstrate that script on. And then as I was creating the heads, I go, God, this is kind of fun. And I just created more heads, then more heads. And if you don't mind me jumping to my desktop really quick, I'll show you some. So I ended up creating more heads, and this is a poster that I created for Nina Paper, and we're going to do a poster signing at the conference. Well, now with everything going on with the virus, the conference has been canceled or postponed, they said, and who knows when that's going to happen again, but just started creating other ones. And the longer I go, the stranger they get. So I started off with ones like this, like this frog. That's about as simple as it gets, just all circular shapes for the most part. And then I started doing things a little more complex, like here's the first kind of alien one I did with this guy here. And then of course, I like Star Trek, so I did a Klingon one time. And then that led to, once again, doing more complex ones, which I'm not making it part of the poster, so I'm not trying to keep it as simple, but doing stuff like this guy and this guy. I'll be posting this guy tomorrow, but that was kind of I'm a fan of sci-fi, so the story behind them will be kind of sci-fi, but I'll try different things. But a good example of creating one, like I did this lion, I like it, but I just didn't like it enough to post it. But this is probably one of my favorite designs I've ever created that was like really simple. And that came about from this project. So it was just starting, just trying to do artwork to make the teaching part of the DVG lab a little more interesting, rather than just being, I hate watching tutorials and the artwork itself just kind of blows. And I can't pay attention if I'm focused on, you know, wow, that's kind of lazy art. Why don't you create something cool? So I was just trying to create something cool. And then that led to kind of me going, wow, I should try other things in this. And it all kind of came about to create what I'm calling them diversity icons. But I've kind of diverged from that a little bit because some of these, they're diverse in style and themes, but they're not just focused on, you know, humans. So I've taken diversity to the kind of the absurd extreme. This is one I did the other week, and I've never used it as a diversity icon. This is how I was originally going to post it, but then I really like the skull so much. And the other day when or last week when I saw all the toilet paper hoarding, I just thought how stupid that was. And then that made me think of the term bonehead, which made me think, oh, I should take that skull and do something with it. And then I turned it into a bonehead design. So I kind of, that's usually how it works for me. If something makes me curious, I kind of explore it and see where it will lead, and try to present it in such a way. For example, on my site, I'm trying to show what a company, how they could use this, even though I haven't, well, I was going to say I haven't gotten any jobs with it. I actually got a job today, and it's because of the bonehead one, which came about because of this project. And a company saw it and they contacted me, and they're having me do these badge designs for their product line. So you never know where something's going to lead, but that's never really the inspiration to do it. It's just something that happened because I decided to do this, and then I saw potential to do it as a personal project. And that's usually the way I've seen things work over the years, is if you're passionate about something, it just, there's something about it that affects your design, and people are attracted to that. And so I encourage people to pursue their personal creativity projects all the time, because if you just wait for somebody to hire you to do something you'd like to do, it might not ever happen. So it's a good way to put your work out there and show something that you really enjoy doing. And the more opportunity for people to see that, the more potential you have of landing jobs to do just that. The best advice I ever got was from another illustrator, Craig Frazier, back in 2003. I'd gone to my first ever illustration conference in Philadelphia, and I knew Craig. He's really well known in illustration circles, and I sat by him, and he had just put out a book, a self-published book of all this artwork he created. And I'm looking through it, and I get to something he did, and I go, wow, this is cool. Who is this for? And he goes, oh, I just did that for fun. Well, 3 more times I get to something, and I'd ask the same thing. Who is this for? Oh, I just did that for fun. And then the 4th time, get around to ask the exact same question, Craig just kind of leans to his side and looks over at me, and he just looks me straight in the eyes and says, Vaughn, you get the work you show. And that's been the single best advice I ever got about, you know, showing your work, and not just showing the work that some client contacted you to create. That's fine, but that's not always going to align with what you would really love to do. And as soon as I started doing that, that's how I've been able to get certain projects. If I never showed it, only showed what clients give me, well, that's kind of, you're showing that your potential is limited to what your client's vision is. So I try to go beyond that. So I encourage you to kind of pursue what you guys are passionate about. And it's a good way to kind of open up that potential. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up. I do have some work I have to get done today, so I want to thank everybody for coming. I hope this at least was a little useful for you, and you learned a few things you might not have already learned. And I apologize for whatever happened with those shapes that I was showing you, but that's actually a good thing, because I run into that kind of stuff all the time with Illustrator. And if you've ever wondered, wow, Vaughn really jumps on the Illustrator people a lot, well, it's because I use Illustrator so much and I run into that kind of stuff all the time. That's just one example. There's all kinds of crazy stuff I notice at times. And right now, I mean, for 8 years, I've been bugging them about the snapping bug. And it took going to India to their headquarters, meeting with their team last July, and having their engineer, they assigned me a group of engineers. We sat at a table and I brought my laptop and I said, okay, do this, try to snap that to that. I was trying to get them to experience what I experience every day. And they were sitting there, and I was going, well, normally it doesn't snap. And then I'm getting frustrated because, you know, it's like Murphy's Law. It's not going to happen when you want it to happen. And then all of a sudden, it did. And the engineers experienced it firsthand for themselves, and then they were stumped. And I go, this is what I've been telling you for, at that point, 7 years. This is what needs to be fixed. You don't think it's important because you don't build stuff with the software you develop. Nobody on your team does. And I'll share one more thing. I've only told a handful of people this, but I offered the Illustrator team to work with them directly for 4 years. Told them I'd shut down my studio to do it, just to help them fix all the various things in Illustrator that could be improved on, snapping being one of them. But to this point, they've never taken me up on that. But I just want it to work. You know, I have better things to do than complain about Illustrator. But once again, it's taken them 8 years to focus on the snapping. So I'm looking forward to that getting fixed. But that's it. I'll let you guys go. I need to get to work, but thanks for stopping in, spending some time. I'd like to do this again sometime. So I'll figure out what would be the best way to approach that. And I'm recording this, so I'll probably take the movie that's created from it and post that on my YouTube channel, which I'm trying to kind of clean up, get rid of old stuff on there. And I'm going to try to do this on a more regular basis. So thanks everybody for coming. Hope you have a nice day. Stay safe, and just pursue your passion. Thanks.